I'm not rich. I'm just I'm a from a middle class family, and the closest we ever came to rich was because my father, my stepfather, did a kind of a candy business. It was really just vending machines, and it started um, out of my room. I started noticing that there was these boxes filled with chips um, in my child. I mean, my parents got a divorce whenever I was about seven, and I knew my stepfather beforehand because he was the preacher of our church. And so for me, I was kind of really a screwed up perspective on why this was this and that, and why that happened, and you could understand how you'd grow up kind of screwed up if you were in a Christian family and your stepfather was a preacher at one point. And um, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna get into that the reason why that happened, but it's really because of just friends and one person's um, treatment of another. Is how my father treated my mother, and there's a whole bunch of stuff in there, and it's really just when it comes down to it is realizing um, realizing that you had needs, but you didn't really require certain things, um, and then you find out that you're okay by yourself, and you don't need to be married and all that thing. That's kind of the thing, and I developed that perspective myself that there isn't a real reason to get married, and the question is um, if if you're married, if the world thinks that marriage is a good thing and divorce is on the table, why get married in the first place? And so for a lot of my time, I spent kind of with the perspective of why get married, and is there any real reason for this to happen? Is it I always kind of flanked the idea of maybe the mainstream is not the correct answer. Maybe for me, it is to try to figure out what's wrong with the world and then try to figure out how to fix it somehow. And that's kind of just how I've always been all my life. But anyhow, my stepfather had a candy chip business type of thing. And it started out of my closet. So I've seen a business grow from very little to quite a lot. That happened when I was like 8 years old. And then by the time I was in high school, my mom was driving a Mercedes Benz. But it was a Mercedes Benz that she found out that she could write it off as a business expense for some reason. And and so the business bought the Mercedes Benz, and and it was seen as the company car to kind of represent the business, And that was that was kind of a dream come true for her because she, always she lived through the Dust Bowl era and the depression and things like that, and to become kind of rich was kind of a lifelong passion, I guess, or a dream of being able to say, look, I'm some, I've got value in this world. Look, I've got a representation of that value. I get this, and I think if you were poor most of your life and then you get to be rich at some time, then it makes you feel, or you get the perception of being rich. It makes you feel a bit better about yourself, and that's I think for her was that was the thing was having um, the capacity to kind of, and she still has I think she still has a problem with it as that she probably doesn't have enough, and I keep telling her you're okay. You have needs, you got to get these things. I mean, she buys books off of my iPad, and they're like $5 and $10, and she feels the need to try to clear it with me that she's bought books, and I was like, Mom, they're just books. They're like $5 and $10. This is like, I do this stuff all the time with my video games, and whenever I do it, she's like, "Oh, you're not spending money on video games," and I said, "Yes, I am. The same reason you're spending money on books." she's she's like, "No, it's like $510." I said, "Yeah, you have to clear it with me every time. What's with that?" So it's like, she's afraid to spend money, and I'm kind of, I have money and I would like to spend it without being nitpicked every bit of the way. And that's just because she went through a life of not having anything hardly. And the same with my stepfather, it was the same sort of way. But with my stepfather, it relinquished itself because he developed, I mean, not my stepfather, my real father, he relinquished it by getting to be a physicist and being paid well. He became educated, and he was able to do well with having that education. It gave him the satisfaction of knowing that he'd be able to always find um, work and be able to make money off that. And he got a good deal work going and stuff. And um, he paid for my tuition whenever I was in private school because I have learning differences. Um, and so, but my stepfather, he was a preacher, and he became a business owner, and he's one of these conservatives that are strongly being that looks up to guys like Reagan and Lincoln and stuff like that. And I'm just like, uh, he watches westerns all the time. That was like his main thing. Is just he, and so I can imagine that probably his dream world is something that's kind of like a libertarian, where it's you're the law, and you try to determine what's right, and you're dealing with you know yeah, you're trying to maintain that everybody has fairness, and that everybody is kind of individuals, and they're living their dream of having their ranch, and dealing with all of the various evils that are in the world, and trying to make sense out of it. It's, for him, that's kind of like, it's like looking backwards is like the future, whereas with me and my real father, it was looking towards the future, science fiction type stuff. And that's kind of where we, in science fiction, the idea is that money is not a concern anymore. um, the evils that exist are evils from other planets that wouldn't be able to identify with us because they're not the same species. And trying to, it's almost the same thing, it's just in a different perspective. And but anyhow, the thing people need to realize, and the rich people need to realize, is that when you develop a great amount of wealth, and you store it up, um, if you don't give to the world something, then they're going to see you as evil. And that evil, it doesn't seem right from your perspective that you're evil, because you haven't like done anything to anybody else, but in fact, in a way, you have. And that is that you've held back from the world those things that they desire and have have need for in order to survive. And if they see you as just this big old cash pot, this cash cow of all the solutions to their problems, and you're not giving it over, they're going to come and steal it from you. And they will see you as evil, in that you're not helping, um, in the position that you're at. You're not out there helping the world. So they're going to see you um, either evil or is somebody that just needs to have stuff stolen from, and that's what's going to happen, and you're going to freak out on that. And the thing is that either you um, either the reason why Jesus was saying to take all that you have and give it to the poor, part of that was to try to help in those situations where when there's great disparity, that people don't come out to kill you, because that's what's going to happen. When there's great disparity, you got a lot of money, people are going to come out to kill you and take everything you got, which is a scary situation. But if you had something that was like communism in your government or socialism, and you paid your taxes, then the potential for that to happen would be less so. And there's no way you're going to come up with your own military to protect you from that catastrophe. The only thing you're going to do is you're going to sit there and tell everybody else that it's wrong to do this, but that doesn't solve the problem. The problem is that there's great disparity in the world, and people need to have stuff in order to survive. And if you're not providing that stuff, they're going to take it from you. And that's just human instinct. Animal instinct is that whenever there's just this big old hog in the middle of a land, and it looks scrumptious, and all the other animals are starving, they're going to come out and they're going to eat that pig, or they're going to eat the farm full of those animals. They're going to come out, and because they're all starving to death. That's the reason why farmers are always on the lookout for predators, because the predators are going to come in and eat up all their livestock. And so they have to be out there with guns and preventing predators from coming in, because it's always a concern there. But in our world, since we got civilization, we got governments, and we got military and all that stuff, it's fairly easy for them to keep the predators from coming in and taking out a rich person. But the thing is that when Reagan came in, he tried to convince people there would be this trickle down economy, this idea that if you treated the rich person special, that they're going to then benefit the world um, by providing more money, because they would be spending money. You would think the same what they would spend if they were if they're at a lower class, spending like $5 or $10 on cokes and stuff would turn, if you were rich, would turn to $500 or $1,000. And the truth of the matter is, you still spend the same amount of money no matter what level of value you're at. And the thing I tell rich people is, I say, if you're not willing to spend money in order to save time, then your friends are going to see you as a idiot. And that the trickle down of economy would be the logical thing, but it's not going to happen. You're not going to have rich people that are going to be spending more money. They're not going to be forming businesses. They're basically just going to live like poorer people with a small amount of money, and they're going to be living with that, and the rest is going to be seen as their future, to cover their future and future families, and various sorts of generations of families. And you kind of get this feeling that you know the good people are the people that are in your family, and that you providing for generations upon generations is going to guarantee your survival in the future. And the thing is that those future generations are going to be much more. They're not going to be able to identify with the people in the world, and they're going to identify with your own family. They're going to see money as a given. they won't have any reason to work for it. And what happens if there's great disparity in the world and all that money is taken from them? They're going to see that as evil, but they're going to start to realize that they've been living in a kind of a lie of an existence where uh, they were living off of somebody else. Their value system is going to get rearranged, but they're going to look at you and they're going to say, "Well, why did you put me in this mess? This unnatural mess of being, of seeing the world as seeing a world where I don't have the capacity to survive on my own." And that's the thing, is that you think you're loving your future family, your children, your grandchildren, all this stuff, by being able to do away with their dependence, and or to do away with their potential for having a calamity, and being able to deal with a life threatening situation by providing money for all their needs for generations upon generations. You see this as a form of love, and it's producing a different kind of experience for them, something called a parasitic lifestyle, where you see all your value coming from a point, and then no reason to identify with anybody else. I mean, you won't be able to identify with anyone else because the people that are poor, you would start to see them as maybe evil, whereas the people who are poor would look at you as evil, and you would start to understand. I mean, you won't understand anything until calamity hits, and then you start to realize that the people that were poor were just like you, and they come to realization about you, maybe, and then that's going to make it easier for you to live past the point of what you thought was the ultimate calamity, and you grew from that and developed a perspective that is more positive, and more beneficial than to see the people who have not as being potential thieves. They'll come and take away your lifestyle, you know. And that's the thing. That's what drives a lot of the concern for communism and socialism. It's really driven by the rich into the media, and the people who are the middle class, or wanting to do better. When they get this propaganda, they think that it's unnatural to have socialism in a government. I mean, to have socialism in a system, um, it, it's unnatural to have a civilized form of socialism available there. And the whole purpose of that is to keep people from seeing you as the source of as the solution to all their problems, and that is not in what you do, but in what you have. See, so if you're but by socialism, what you're doing is you're just demonstrating to them that um, you believe in a civilized system where the people who end up poor have a leg to stand on and get back in, and start working again. And to tax the poor is wrong, but to tax the rich is not wrong. But the rich, the way they often become rich is by starting out poor, and to them to have money taken from them, it's like they're still poor, but they don't understand that they're rich. And so they see socialism and communism in some cases, like if it was Ayn Rand's family, where all of their value was taken from them whenever the Russian Revolution occurred. That was what drove her so negatively against communism and socialism. Um, Communism being that everybody, that nobody has any great amount. There's no disparity in the you know you work and you live, and everybody's dependent on each other, and there's trust. There's an assumption of trust, and that you're providing for each other. Socialism is what probably develops whenever um, develops in a situation like ours, where the ultimate target is a kind of communism, but it's a forced communism. It's like a kind of communism um, against your will, and that the only communism that can never work is the one where I talk about the first Christian church, where people agree to have all of their money, to have all of what they have turned into money, and then become dependent upon each other, creating a kind of a commune, a codependence, um, and a mutual dependence, and people supporting each other, and everybody working and everybody becoming like one big family. And in the 50s, the idea of being with all of your family, being with your grandparents all together, reminds you too much of the Dust Bowl, the Great Depression. Because so what people did is they started coming together into families and live with each other. And the problem with that is that you can never like really grow and go out and do something for yourself. And so in the 50s, whenever people had the tools to go out and create businesses and things like that, individuality was on the upside, and and living as one big family was seen as kind of like, this isn't necessary anymore. I can go out, live on my own. You know, my parents can live pretty well. I can live pretty well. We can all have separate families. We don't have to live together. We don't have to share the same space. We can have our own homes and things like that. And now we're starting to experience where it might go back the other direction, where people are back to living each other in large families, and it oscillates like that. It's just natural. That's just the way it goes. And one way to fix that problem is through socialism, where people are provided public housing, and when they're on the bottom end, they end up in public housing trying to get out of it so that they can go out and form. But if you don't collect money from the people, then there's going to be other kinds of problems that develop as a result. So socialism is necessary in order to create a civilized system like we had. What we're doing now is, I mean, we've got one set of individuals, a very small amount, that own most of the wealth in the country. And what's going to happen is, if the country isn't able to survive, the money we have is dead, and this certain individual owns most of the value of the country. They may buy a military to kick us all out, and then they just end up owning the entire land, or everybody turns and takes everything they have, and there's no telling what's going to happen as a result of that. And it's really just a matter of these people with all this money having to realize that they can't keep taking any longer, or that the money they have, the stuff they have, is going to get stolen. It's going to be kind of all like a post-apocalyptic, kind of dystopian future, something like out of Mad Max, and the ultimate end of it, where the all the money that would be there, is all the stuff has been pretty much destroyed, and all that's left is the very essentials, gas and water and things like that. So, yeah, just wanted to talk about socialism, communism, and you know, it looks evil from the perspective of a rich person, but it's necessary in order. What I say is, capitalism capitalism and socialism are the yin and the yang. They're the chlorine and sodium that make salt. You know, you need both of them in order to create a civilized society. And to see the other one as being evil, I mean, to see the Democrats and the conservatives looking at each other evil, whenever one is trying to adjust the system to be fair, and the other one is keeping a hold on to what has always worked. You know, they're really just there's a relationship going on there, and whenever you see the other as evil, then it's going to fail. The whole thing's going to fail. Everything's going to fail, and then you won't realize it until the shit is at the fan. And now we just heard that 4 states just got hit by these crazy tornadoes. And can you describe to me how such great calamities like that occur and why they occur? I mean, people say why they occur is because it's nature. I say no. Maybe there is someone out there that's saying to you, you can't go on believing that you've got stuff, you know, and that you're going to be dependent on yourself. At some point, the shit's going to hit the fan, and you're going to have to realize that there's a higher power, and that you're going to have to look towards people around you as potentially coming to your rescue. And they might not, but you will find out that there are people that could be that you could care for and help, and then as a result would help you. People would, you know, maybe the best of people will come out, and you won't see the others as being evil, and you won't come to the realization, you won't develop this perspective that rich people do, that the people that are homeless are druggies, you know, drug addicts, because that is the perspective they have. And really all the homeless people are is that they're people that are just like them, that have just had the money taken away from them. And that when the rich people have their money taken away, they're going to be homeless too. And then they're going to start to realize that all their life they've been seeing these people that are druggies as being druggies, whenever really they were just like them without the money, you know. And then they might have a different perspective on life. They might say, well, there is a real need for me to have the money because I know what it was like when I had it. And now I feel so much better not really having so much. Because that is a perspective that some rich people develop, is that they realize that they've been living in a kind of a strange existence, and now they have real freedom. They have freedom apart from money, and they can go out and have a different kind of lifestyle. And they feel better about themselves by be able to create value and being, you know, being able to have something that feels real. Okay, so, and now I'm starting to lose my voice because this is what happens when I talk too much.